Hi, everybody. This is your friend and host, Anthony Burris, for Life and Finances with Sacrifice and Service. Now, today I want to have some fun. And whenever we're going to talk about money and money related things such as life and finances, I am excited. Now, what I want to talk about today is pneumatics. That's Numismatics. And pneumatics really and truly is just a collecting of coins and money and anything that you can use to settle a financial debt or obligation. Even stamps can actually turn out to be pneumatics. Now, number one, when it comes to money and things related to it, it goes as far back as 4 to 5,000 BC when folks took metals, cut them out into shapes, put scratches and marks on them, and then they used it as money. And that was known as the Mesopotamian shekel. Now, this is in the time in the heart of Africa, in the times when civilization was still early, because the earth is estimated, due to those who follow the Bible principle, to be in the vicinity of 6 to 7,000 years old. Of course, those who follow science put it as billions and on and on and on, but they have no way of justifying it. Now, the thing is, one of the earliest known time for actually having money made that was found and having minted, meaning done in large quantities and portions for a particular government, was around 600 BC. So around 4 to 5,000 BC, they started using metal, but just putting little inscriptions on it. And then around 600 BC was when they really start to organize it and get it into a proper economic system. Now, the first paper money started about 1,000 years ago in China. And China used it. Actually, what caused them to start doing it was using it so that merchants could go from one end of the nation to the next end without having to carry barter goods in order to get items from one. So China is a big nation, and it was even larger back then. And so what they did, they would travel from one end. They would use this paper money, which would be good, given to the merchants, and then merchants can in turn turn it into the treasury, which was how the Chinese worked at the time. Now, it was basically just a form of the government offering bills of credit, and the merchants would be able to then cash them in with the government. And as I said, it was useful for long distance trade. Now, 500 years later, this was 1,000 years ago that the Chinese did it. About 500 years after that, around the 1600s, the Europeans caught on to it, and they started doing it in Europe. Now, in the world today, there are 180 different currencies in the world. However, there are 193 UN member nations, and two of them are observer states. One of the two observer states is the Holy See, and the second one is Palestine. Now, the Holy See, for those who don't know, is actually Vatican City, which is represented as a nation inside of a nation, because Vatican City is situated in Italy, so it's a nation inside a nation. Now, let's look at the most traded currencies. Well, everybody know. You got the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the euro, the British pound, the Canadian dollar. They are the most traded currencies and most used currencies on the planet of the earth. And the thing is, the estimated value of paper money in circulation today, take a guess. Do you know? It's estimated at $80 trillion. $80 trillion in paper currencies that are circulating this earth today. Now, the lowest value of any currency, because you like to know that, right? Bahamas like to talk about the value of, the JA dollar or the Mexican peso and things like that. But here we go. The lowest valued currency on this planet right now is the Iranian rial. One US dollar is worth 42,000 rials. And now the highest valued currency on the planet today is the Kuwaiti dinar. And one Kuwaiti dinar is worth $3.30 US dollar. So for Kuwait to do any trade with the rest of the world, it's expensive because their currency is very, very solid in terms of the value. Now, of course, if you have their currency and you moving around to purchase, then you well ahead of the game. But of course, every nation will trade in things where they have what is known as the competitive advantage. And for Kuwait, oil is their competitive advantage. So that's what they sell around the world. Now, the largest single bill that can be found on the earth is the 100,000 peso. And the funny thing about it, they made them as collector's items, and the 100,000 peso sold for 180,000 pesos. But it's a collective item, and we know it'll increase in value. Now, number two, 8% of the currencies on this planet actually is paper money. It's actually in the form of paper, because nowadays you have currency in different forms. You got credit cards, debit cards, then persons who write their checks. You have the online transactions, electronic transfers when you're transferring money among different countries and what have you. You have the mobile transfer and the mobile app, financial apps. Then we have cryptocurrency, digital/virtual currency, which is basically just secured by electronic protection/computer codes. And the cryptocurrency is, they're saying, to have the best format in terms of prevent counterfeiting or double spending. And the best example of cryptocurrency is the Bitcoin, which I'm still doing a lot of research on, because in many ways I don't understand it like I would like to. And person say, hey, why don't you invest? And I'm like, if I don't understand it, I can't put no money in it. And the good thing, I guess, on one hand, and the bad thing on the next hand, is that the cryptocurrency is not controlled by governments. Governments don't control it, but governments, they always want they're eager to sink their teeth into money and take from you and I. So they're going to be getting into that soon. At least in the U.S., the government is studying now that Biden is in. I can rest assured within 2 years, they're going to be taxing the Bitcoins and all the cryptocurrencies. Now, some of the pros for the cryptocurrency, when you think about it, you have potential for massive return, because you see the value goes up a lot. And the thing is, it goes up over such a short time horizon. So it has great potential in terms of bringing wealth. Then there's the increased liquidity, so they can get it out there fast, quickly into the system, simply through the digital means. And then the next item is that it has a clear direction for execution. It's clear in terms of what you're going to do with it, where it's going to go, how it's going to be spent. Now, the con side is that it's volatile, because it could just how fast something can go up, that's just how fast it can come down. Then you have the possibility of these computer network issues. Sometimes the network slow down and stall. That could jack you up. And there's the shortage of resources. For instance, certain people don't have computers, and so far as getting around the world as quickly and make it something available like our dollar bill can be, that doesn't have that advantage. And then there's that potential for mismanagement, seeing that there's no clear oversight. And the funny thing about, when you think of cryptocurrency, you're in a situation you're not actually physically touching something. But when you have the actual physical currency, coins and paper and all of that, there's always viruses, bacteria, different things that you can pick up on the bill itself. And it was said, and I think this was perpetuated by the DEA so that the U.S. government could bump up their budget and make them more important in the system. They were saying that 80% of every dollar bill and certain amount of the 10, 5s, and 20s were all traced around the world to have cocaine on them. But, I have my doubts about that. And then the one funny thing also is that when you're in a situation, where you have these bills, they look old and crumple up and all of that, and you're putting it into your wallet, but it'll be like, oh goodness, this don't look good. Simply turn that microwave on and throw it in there for a couple of seconds, and the bill comes back to life, almost new again. Now, the third item I want to look at is money as an incentive. And the biggest incentive with money, we see it every day. Persons jump in their automobiles, get up early in the morning, jump in their automobiles, drive to a place of work, put in 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, depending if you're self-employed and all of that. Put in those hours, and then they trade those hours at the end of the week, end of the 2 weeks, end of the month for a salary. Now, I'll look at it when we say civil servants trading in their time, their 8 hours and whatever you. And many civil servants, especially with this pandemic, many still aren't at work, even though they should be and can be at work. Well, I guess some people will dispute it. But anyhow, push comes to shove, many aren't putting in the time that they should to serve us, the Bahamian people. Now, this salary came about really and truly with the Romans. What they used to do, they used to give their soldiers stipend, and the stipend would be with the coins to go and purchase salt. Now, the thing about the value of the salt was that it was used, of course, for cooking, and then, of course, used for preservation of foods and goods and all of that. But you had a situation if you had 10,000, 20,000, sometimes 50,000 soldiers, and you're going from one end of Europe to the next end, trying to conquer and destroy. Or even when you had the Nebuchadnezzar and those guys and Nimrod and them going around, they had to tote a bunch of salt because you had to kind of preserve the food so that when the soldiers get there, because if it what's the use having a large army and they're not fed? So salt had that tremendous value. And then, of course, salt has the value for health, even though as a nation we're encouraged to use less salt consumption. And you see it every day with some of these food items got 25% salt and on and on. But it's something that we look at. The salt had tremendous value. And in fact, wars in those days used to actually be fought over salt. And then when you speak further of incentive, because you see salaries and incentive, I had to smile the other day looking at Hungary as a nation. Right here they are in Eastern Europe. Hungary, they're losing a lot of their citizens. What they're doing, they're immigrating to other European countries, because in the EU, you could go and live and move and work in any country that you want to. So a lot of them are leaving, going to other countries in the EU and taking up jobs, that's paying better salaries. So what they're doing now with Hungary, they're giving out a 30,000 euro loan, 30,000 euro loan. We'll call it that, which will be about like 35, maybe $40,000 in dollars when you look at it. And they're taking that and they are just giving it interest free. And then if you have 3 children, you don't have to pay it back. This is a family, a married couple. If they have 3 children, you do not have to pay it back. If you happen to have a 4th child, you discontinue paying income tax. Then after 3 children, the government will subsidize the purchase of a home. They'll put in a certain amount towards it. And they'll subsidize you having a larger automobile. Then you get different perks in terms of parking, stickers, and so. But I'm saying here's a nation who understands what it is to try to put their own people first. If we could only get to that, where we put Bahamians first. But hopefully we'll reach that one of these days. So that was just something, by the way, and I was like, whoa, man, I love to see a nation that puts its own people first. Then the 4th item now, look at some money trivia when you so to speak. And it struck me, if you just want to make £1 out of dollar bills, $20, whatever, out of bills, period, you would have to put 454 bills on the scale before it reaches £1. Then, for instance, if you take a 25-cent coin, hold that coin up and you try to count those grooves on the edges, it's 119 grooves. See if you could count that later on sometime today. And the thing is, what struck me even further, with machine, a single dollar bill, $20 bill, a single bill can be folded 4,000 times before it actually tears. Then I found fascinating, the US and their daily printing of money use 7 tons of ink on a daily basis. Boy, I wouldn't mind being in that ink business, selling them ink. 7 tons of ink on a daily basis. And the thing is, what's fascinating, I always wondered, how much does a bill cost to actually make? And a single bill costs 20 cents. So you're 80 cents ahead if it's a dollar bill, and way further if it's a 5, 10, and so on. And the thing is, in the US now, they are printing 38 million notes daily, valued at $541 million. And of course, 50% of them are dollar bills because, dollar bills tend to move more quickly and more rapidly around in commerce. And the thing is, and when we think about government printing, the US is the best at this, them and some of the European countries as well as China. They print money just to cover the borrowing and the spending when they can't sell their bonds. The thing is, they increase the money supply and it causes inflation and it creates an artificial economy. Because you look around, some countries, they drive interest rate down to almost down to zero so that housing can get a start and so the persons can borrow money, do the different things to try to get the economy going. But that's fake and fraud economies. Now, for the Bahamas, Our $50 bills, they're printed in Canada. Our dollar bills are printed in the UK. I couldn't get the other information on the other bills. And then in our case, we print money every 5 years. I wonder if that has anything to do with election. Maybe it does. But every 5 years, we print money. And our bills are intended to circulate for exactly 1 year. Now, the B dollar value in circulation, how much do you think Bahamian dollars are actually in circulation right now? Take a guess. Okay, you give up? 500 million Bahamian dollars are in circulation right now. That's our economy with 500 million Bahamian dollars in circulation. Our dollars, actually, our Bahamian dollar that is actually backed by our foreign reserve, and the foreign reserve is actually US dollars, which is estimated to be just over $2 billion. And the thing is, we back in our dollar with a money that's actually fake money, because the US dollar isn't really backed by anything. It's backed, I guess, by the big guns, bombs, and planes, and the belief that, hey, that government can meet any obligation that comes due. But because you remember the US, historically, all governments in the past used to have their monies backed by gold. And then I can remember as a boy, in 1971, I think it was, I was 11 years old when Richard Nixon went to China. Because I remember it was a big thing, 71 or 70, whatever, when he went to China. And that's because, their economy started to stall. And he figured, hey, let's go to China. Let's get these people, they got money, start the trading and bartering with them. And that's when all the US companies start to set up their manufacturing plants and different things in China, start to produce cheaper, and then send it back to the US. And, so that giving the competitive advantage there to the Chinese and whatever, and then the US consumer could then purchase at a lower price. You see how, what I call it, a fictitious, false economy work, and it usually, and this is how come you get all these rise and bumps and all of that. But eventually everything comes due. But, it's one of those things. Then the fifth item want to look at, oh goodness, you know what I have to get on. Now, the largest source of spending worldwide, besides military and things like that, is actually consumer spending. And you know what I'm saying? If you are a consumer, right, you are actually just buying personal things, because a consumer is really a person who buys, I would say, buy or purchase goods and services for personal use, personal consumption. Television, phone, shoes, clothes, hat, food, whatever it is you're doing, is personal consumption. It's not something that's going to increase in value and grow the economy, grow our economy. So let's look at it now. The international data for the Bahamas consumer spending, 2019, our consumers estimated to spend $8.1 billion. Now, on a normal year, our national budget is just over $3 billion, usually around 3.2. So can you imagine, we're spending almost 3 times the national budget. Boy, that put us in the hole. Almost 3 times the national budget, 2.5, I guess you'd call it, right? When you look at it. Now, this thing about consumerism starts on the individual level, just buy, spend, borrow. Then it moves to the family, it moves to the community, it spreads throughout your particular island, and then eventually throughout our country. And you know how this is made possible? It's made possible by credit and borrowing. Mostly for most of us, on the individual level, it's the credit card. For government, it's just borrowing. And the largest source of consumer spending is the credit card. And the thing is, the credit card allows you to spend more than you actually earn. So if you're making $1,000 a month, by having the credit card, you could spend another $500. So you could probably spend $1,500 if you want to. So you're now going to be that much in the hole. It's a slippery slope. Now, some people refer to the credit card as a lifesaver. Others refer to it as a debt trap. But my thing is that, hey, just be wise in your use of it. I'm not the biggest supporter of it, but, the world is the world, and you sometimes have to figure out how you're going to maneuver. I say let's use cash, stick with cash, because you feel the pain and the crunch when you're pulling out your cash out that wallet. You be like, you know what, I don't need that. Whereas with the credit card, swish, man, let's have it. Now, the first set of credit card that started to be really you accepted around on a wide level was Diners Club. I can remember in the 70s as a boy, you'd hear about Diners Club and you'd see the tourists and they would have the Diners Club, but they would use them mainly in the hotel. Now, when you look at credit card worldwide, on an annual basis, there's about 368.9 billion transactions a year, which is just over 1.1 billion transactions a day. Woo, that's a lot of credit card activity. Now, how do the card companies make their money? They make their money your processing fee, interest payments. They even charge the merchants who you go and spend with, the merchant fees. Then you got membership fee, and then they got fee. When you take your credit card statement, man, take a fine teeth comb and go over that. And like I said, the credit card is the typical debt that most people, especially most people in civilized society, forgive me for saying civilized, but in most people in Western culture, the credit card is the item that has a lot of them with a chain and ball on their leg. Now, the average working Bahamian has one card. I'll go on with this part. The average civil servant / quasi-government employee has 2 loans, and they're spending 35 to 60% of their income on loan payments and credit card payments. Now, when we look at us as a nation, let's look at it. The Bahamas, currently, we have a $9 billion debt. Man, and so what we are doing, we are way above, let's say, our national budget being 3.2. We are 3 times at the whole in that. Our GDP, we well above our GDP, which is the gross domestic product, which is all the goods and services that's done in the country on an annual basis. So we are in a bad way. But to fix it, it's going to take you, and you. Be wise in the handling of your money, because remember, save the money is the money that goes out there that businesses can utilize. But you know what these banks are doing, especially the commercial banks. Even though you and I may save some money, they telling the businesses, get out of here. And then the person who come in to buy a television or take on a trip, they giving them money. You see what I'm saying? So our money is being used poorly. But let's continue to look at debt. The U.S. got a $3.9 trillion debt. But their GDP is around 21 to $24 trillion a year. So they are, but anyhow, that's still outrageous. Trinidad and Tobago, some of our Caribbean brothers, let's look at them. They got $10.8 billion in debt. That's crazy. Jamaica, $14.14 billion in debt. Even crazier. Barbados, $6.35 billion in debt. Crazy. Utter stupidity. When your debt can be grossly exceeding your GDP, it's just, I don't understand. Then a good example, a best example of debt around the world, when you look at the U.S. and their student loan, and then you can't shake that no matter what. Same thing with this inflated cost for colleges and universities around the states. Ridiculous, but it's all pumped by a phony economic system to keep us prisoners. Now, if you're a Bahamian, UB is free. Get your first degree there if you can afford it. If you can't afford to go off, and don't go off, parents don't send them children off and then you here starving. Come on, don't do that. Then as we go on, as I come close to wrapping up, 96% of Americans at retirement age can't retire because of debt. And then the vast majority of Bahamians, when 65 come, they are not prepared and ready for retirement and would love to continue working so that they can meet some obligations or get caught up. And usually in most cases, it's children feeding and sucking on them and taking their resources. But you know what? You can't spend freely right now and hope to be ready for retirement. You see, remember this now, folks. Let's remember this. Money makes up a great percentage of your life and my life, and is one of the determining factors as to the type of life you will have. So don't squander your wealth now and your generations to come future. So I'll say this. May the God of heaven and his son, the Christ, bless and prosper you, and I will see you next time.